thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate you taking the time on this Thursday afternoon for some of you, and maybe it's about to start depending on where you are. So today it's really about seeing Dataware in action under the credit union context. We want this to be a bit of a live interactive session. So, feel free to ask questions, feel free to jump in, unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions as we kind of go along. We want to be interactive and address any questions or concerns you might have. And so maybe a quick introduction. My name's Dallin. I'm an account director here at Cinchy. And I've had the pleasure of getting really a ton of exposure of working in the credit union space more recently. My background's mostly been working in financial services and moved into technical sales, but I got some early exposure to the credit union space, and I've been loving it since. And I'll talk a little bit more about what does that mean and how does it apply from that context. Dan, do you want to do an introduction?
Yeah. So hey everyone, thanks again for joining. I'm Dan. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and similar to Alan, my background is in financial services, not in the credit union space, but working in some big giant banks, and I've had a similar experience. So it's been quite a refreshing few years, kind of getting to know the industry and seeing the applicability of our technology. So excited to meet with you all today.
Great. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about today's agenda. Perfect. So the idea is that we're going to try to do this discussion around 30 minutes, and we'll leave a bit of Q&A at the end of it. But today, what we like to cover is a little bit about Dataware for some of you that may be new to the concept of Dataware. And then what we'd like to do is show you a little bit about the platforms from a capabilities perspective, just so that you can get a sense of it. And then what we'll do is we'll dive into some of the credit union specific use cases that are being used today across 80 plus credit unions in that context. And we can even do a little bit of a demo of a specific CU use case as a part of today's discussion. And what I'll do now is I'll pass it to Dan, who will kind of get us started, and then we can go from there.
Thanks, Alan. And as Alan said, please do at any point just jump in. We got a good group here. The more interactive, the better. So don't hesitate. So as Alan mentioned, I'm going to cover just the concepts of Dataware for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it. I'll probably cover this pretty quickly. So if anyone wants to go deeper in it, you can just check things out online at cinchy.tv. And there's a whole lot of content there if you want to go very deep down the rabbit hole. But the idea of Dataware actually goes back a number of decades. But it's based on the belief that the way that we've architected technology systems has been a little bit upside down for the past many decades, going all the way back to really the first computer program that ever ran in 1948. But the way that we design systems ever since is you have these things called applications that are code, and this code needs to remember information. So it stores data in a database, and that database is usually purpose-built and designed to meet the needs of the application. So the data really has been created and existed to serve the needs of the applications. Whereas the paradigm shift here that Dataware introduces is essentially flipping that on its head, where the apps actually exist to serve the data. So it's a complete reversal of roles. They don't address the actual root issue of fragmentation and silos. They're very narrowly focused on enabling analytics, the ability to get intelligence out of data from these siloed systems. But every time you add a new system, whether it's an Excel-based system or an enterprise-grade system or a new core, whatever that is, you're adding silos, and that's the problem. So Dataware is not better than any of these, it's just completely different. Think of it as really doing for data what the power grid did for power. So you can see the illustration here. You've got apps, some of which can be custom developed, some of which could be using a low-code solution. Some of them could be vendor products. Some of them could be SaaS applications. Every one of them storing data in their own silo. And you build APIs and ETLs to basically move copies of data kind of endlessly around in circles, where Dataware talks about the alternative where you have the application still, but they don't store their own data, yet each has access to all data. So that's kind of an extreme without Dataware, and an extreme when you've got nothing but Dataware. but often our customers are not able to start from scratch. They have their existing systems. So the question then becomes, well, how can I utilize Dataware in my environment to begin the transformation towards data centricity? So just as a quick example, we're not a credit union, but we run our business on Dataware. And we like to showcase that because by doing that, it enables an outcome that, quite frankly, is not possible with any other technological approach. So you have to think of really the platform as kind of like our company's brain. We have 0 data silos. We don't spend $1 doing app-to-app integrations. We've created the equivalent of what would have required us to build almost 3,000 integrations and spend millions of dollars. And we're a scale-up. We're 53 and growing strong. But you know, every employee that is in the company and everyone that joins in the future has instant access to all knowledge in the company. The only restriction is that your access is controlled based on what role you play in the company. That's it. That's the only impediment that slows down your ability to implement any change, to ask any question, to get any insight, to generate any intelligence. And you can see a bunch of metrics here, you know, how many domains we have and entities. Really what this means is we have all of our knowledge in a single location that can be interacted with by regular people that don't even need to be uber techy to be able to benefit from this knowledge. So we still use applications, but the apps, quite frankly, are put in their place. They serve the data, not the other way around. So as a couple of examples in our world, so we use a solution called HubSpot, which many will use as a CRM, but we use it not as a CRM, we use it really just for email automation, but we've plugged that into Dataware. We use a service called Gong for recording and transcribing meetings and acting as a note taker, but we've not plugged that into every other application. We've plugged it into Dataware. So each of these systems, they still add value, but they're sourcing data from Dataware and they're contributing data back to Dataware. They're each part of the collaborative. They're not trapping the data in silos. They're not requiring us to build all these direct integrations. And all of the data as it's evolving is available through a single user interface that is used by our partners, used by prospects, used by customers, used by employees, used by our shareholders. We don't use Excel spreadsheets to run the business. So it's all powered by data where we have total control over our data. So what I want to do is actually jump in and show you a quick live demo of just how we've been able to utilize that. But anyone have any questions at this point, just on the concept before we switch into the demo? And after the demo, then Alan's going to really introduce from the credit union perspective. No? Okay. All right, so let's jump in. So I'm in Cinchy now. So what you're seeing is one of the experiences, which is called the network map, that allows you to just visualize where all of your information is across the organization. Now, this is only showing what I have access to. If Alan were to log in, he's going to see a slightly different view. He'll see nodes that I don't see and vice versa. But if I zoom in here, what you're seeing is these little dots, these little circles. They're actually data sets. So there's employees as an example, and here is KPIs, and here's jobs. And you can see all the relationships between all of that data. And some data sets are larger, not because they have more rows of data, but because they're more connected than other data sets. So the connectivity of the data becomes the centerpiece of, you know, how valuable and critical is the information to the organization. The different colors represent different domains. So like this yellow color, it's because it's in our employee success domain, which some organizations would call human resources. So for example, if I wanted to look at all of our employee data, I could just on the left use the navigator here and search for employee, and I can see there's employee success and there's all of our HR data. I could separately search for, let's say I want to look at all of our marketing data. Well, that's all the purple data that you're seeing here. And maybe I want to look for sales or finance or really any data. There's my sales data. Maybe I want to look at a customer and I want to just, you know, not only see the data, but actually locate a particular data set. So maybe I want to look at our actual customers. And from here, maybe I want to actually go into the data. So I can just kind of pop into a data set where I can see it, I can change it, I can query it, I can delete it if I have access, and the access is controllable down to a data cell level. So I can basically get information at my fingertips. I can ask questions to it. I can go back in time. This is just a simple way of discovering data. But behind all of that, I can open up different experiences. So for example, This is a customer 360 view that was assembled over the course of hours because it's very easy to build skins on top of the data fabric, where the data fabric can then connect into your existing systems, your core, your Excel spreadsheets, your text files, your external sources. So what you're seeing is just a fake customer, but our real customers, we have the actual same intelligence for them that you're about to see. But we're just showing the fake one, of course. But you can see like intelligence that we have about an organization. We have the Cinchy team and the personality profiles. So we're applying AI here to basically predict people's personalities, both for our employees and our customers to do profiling and matching. Which is great to optimize our sales process and documents that may be relevant to this particular customer, and every sales opportunity, every lead that you're seeing. And again, everything you're seeing here is mock data, of course, but we have this exact same information, and I can pop into a lead 360 or a company 360. I can see every order that they placed. I can see engagement signals, and I can see that they followed us on LinkedIn, they met us one-on-one at a webinar, or I can see health checks and NPS scores. I can see every project that we've delivered, every support ticket that they've ever opened, every dev ticket that they've ever opened. And if I want, I can pop into a customer 360, sorry, a ticket 360, or I can open up a new ticket, because this is not just a view, it's an editable view. It's a full editable experience. I can see every person that we've ever met with, every meeting that we've ever had. And I can see that we spent $71,000 and $545 over 11 hours meeting with this prospect or meeting with this customer, which works out to 23.46% of our revenue. You look at that alone and just think of the data that you would need in order to be able to provide that simple analysis. You need your calendar data, you need your employee data, you need to know what the salaries are, and the salaries can change over time. If you have salary employees in different locations, you're gonna have to do currency conversions. You need to know FX rates. You're gonna need all of your basically meeting attendees and who was there, and the association back to the actual customer account. But here, the ability to go from I have a question to I have the answer is now minutes to hours instead of months and millions, which is what it would traditionally take, where we have to settle on just not having that intelligence and that visibility. So that's just a very quick sneak peek at the technology. Any questions? Okay. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Alan.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Dan. So I know for all you fans out there, but my story kind of began with when credit unions and met Dataware, over the last couple of years. Is what I find that one of the most interesting things about working in the credit union space is there's this concept of really collaboration in the environment, and a lot of the credit unions are very focused on really, how do I drive more value for members? How do I look for efficiencies? How do I compete at a national level, but also at the same time scale and do it in an effective way? And one of the things that I'm very proud of and also really enjoy working in the credit union space is just really the collaboration across all the credit unions that are ultimately trying to solve real business challenges. There's these organizations, there's no BS. It's really about how do I go and tackle the problems, and how do I roll my sleeves up and go and go after some of these challenges that we're experiencing, but do it in an effective and a scalable way. So I really, over the last 2.5 years, have enjoyed working in the credit union space, and I see it as a big opportunity for us as an organization to kind of double down and look for ways that we can continue to add value to the credit union space in North America. So why don't we'll go into a little bit about some of the credit union patterns that we've seen when Dataware is applied in the context for these credit unions. The first one is really around user managed data collaboration. So you can think of this as spreadsheet, access database elimination. I don't know any credit union out there that doesn't love spreadsheets, uses it for a lot of core critical processes. It's the fastest way to get to solving some of your challenges. The problem is it brings a lot of risk, a lot of operational risk, a lot of manual processing. It requires more people, data manipulation, you're often creating tons of silos, and every credit union that I've ever spoken with generally has 50 plus spreadsheets supporting core activities, which is a little bit nervous from an operational standpoint, especially if you're in a COO hotspot. So that's kind of one of the patterns we've seen where Dataware is applied. Another one is really app augmentation. A classic example that I've seen in the credit union space is, let's say you have a CRM system, maybe it's Salesforce, maybe it's Microsoft Dynamics. You're using it to capture a lot of CRM related information, but where you struggle are things that are outside of what the application is built for. So I'll give you an example is leads referral. That's a big one in the credit union space. You know, you have a branch, they work in wealth, they work in they're part of the, you know, front facing customer, and they, you know, they're interacting with their member, and it's like, well, I want to refer you to one of our wealth partners because, you know, I looked at your profile, I looked at, you know, you have $1 million in your checking system, maybe 50,000 or whatever the case, and there's an opportunity to do referrals. And oftentimes these systems that are designed, you know, to solve for CRM in itself doesn't address the requirements that fit your business, and that's really a usage pattern that we've seen in the credit union space is augmenting a core application, and that could be your core banking system, whatever the case, and using Dataware that kind of overlaps on top of it, and you're able to take information from your core system, but also extend it through the use of Dataware. So that's another pattern that we've seen in the credit union space, and then I would say probably more consistent is really the core app persistence and controls as a service. So, you know, I talked about the ability to have a place where you need to continuously store new information all the time, especially when you're, if you're an organization that builds a lot more applications versus buying. There are capabilities, especially if you do buy application, but it's a lot more prevalent, and especially when you're building new applications, you need a specific place to put it. Lots of organizations are always standing up new data stores to capture that information. Then they store it, and then they're like, we need to reuse it. We do integration. It just becomes this web of complexity all the time because you're just standing up new data stores all the time. And what Cinchy and Dataware brings you is really this place where you're continuously able to have you know, cross-app persistence and also controls as a service. So being able to build all these skins around a Dataware platform without having to deal with all of the challenges that fragmentation, data silos, and integration brings to the table.
Yeah, just one thing to add to that, Alan, is the key here is that this is a bit of a methodology in addition to technology, because it's really recognizing that you can't just go and replace everything. You've got your existing systems, you've made a substantial investment, you can't just you know, at least not overnight, go and replace them. So the idea of augmentation means you're connecting your systems together, but then enabling the creation of rich end user experiences for your members, for your customers, for your employees, for everyone, where you're able to build without being limited by your existing systems, but you're fully reusing your existing systems while unlocking the data from being trapped inside of the system simultaneously. So it's really a way of creating rich experiences on top of a connected representation of your existing data, which today may exist in silos and be fragmented.
Awesome. Yeah, and you know, oftentimes, you know, what I hear, Dan, is like, you know, how do you get started with Dataware if I'm a credit union? Like, what kind of advice or that you would give to folks that are considering taking the plunge into Dataware?
Well, it's really just as simple as that, which is, okay, if you're not going to replace the things that you already have, because you have things that you need to implement that you don't yet have, you need to offer new experiences, you need to digitize, there's a whole bunch of things that you need to do. You need to replace spreadsheets where there's risky processes. There's simply applying Dataware to solve the business problems that you are looking to solve in the first place is honestly, it seems perhaps obvious, but it in our experience, it actually isn't, because a new technology opens up new possibilities. But I would say you would get started by applying the new technology to your existing challenges. Yes, you will find that over time it opens up new possibilities, but start by letting it take you to where you want to get to in a better, faster, cheaper way. You want to launch a new digital experience that consolidates the interactivity across 3 siloed systems, we'll do that, but save time and money while doing it. Then move on to the next project, the projects that are already planned, that are already budgeted, and benefit from the acceleration, benefit from the savings, but you're enabling that transformation as a byproduct of delivering the change. And next thing you know, you have less integration, you have less silos, you have better accessibility, better control over data. Your data is no longer trapped. That's the added benefit of what the unique approach actually unlocks by simply doing what you were going to do anyway.
Great. All right, let's keep going. So one of the things that we're doing is we're working with a very strategic partner / customer, which is if some of you are familiar with Concentra Bank more recently, with they've renamed it to and rebranded to With Financial, and what we're working with them is really the idea of building a composable enterprise and driving to really new member experiences and being able to provide a level of different capabilities that enable them to scale other credit unions as a part of it. And I know, Neil, you're on the call as well. Thanks for joining. But you know, Neil's been a strong advocate, and maybe, Neil, you want to say something. I see you unmute yourself.
Putting him on the spot, Alan.
I did. You know, one thing is I was talking to Neil yesterday, and I said I wouldn't do it, but he's here now, so maybe I should do it.
Yeah, so we're definitely you know, vested in the Cinchy journey and in the Dataware journey for sure, because we had to improve what we do. And when I first joined Concentra, we had 300 plus spreadsheets, and of consequence, not little ones, but 300 meaningful ones. So we had to bring our data together, and so it was a logical thing to do, and we did it. And now we're actually thinking about how we can do similar things for our credit union clients to help them lever such an asset in their own instance. Like, and we did a good example we did last year, no, a year ago, was we launched the SEVA loan program with Cinchy, and we used the SEVA Cinchy front end to bring the data in, and we helped them. They helped us manage that and get that up in very short order. And so if you go to the Cinchy site, there's a case study on that, and that was just a great experience for both firms. And so, yeah, I'm on for a reason just to listen to what Alan says, but also to support the Cinchy program. Thanks.
Thanks, Neil.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, just one thing that I'll also just share is it's been great working with you as well, because one of the things I appreciate about what you guys are doing is not only using modern technology to drive operational efficiencies and whatnot, but the idea of taking a composable approach to enable plug and play for the credit unions that you provide service to, such that they can punch above their weight by basically using services and then offer a fulsome experience without having to bear the burden of building all of those from the ground up, I think is actually awesome. So I think that's just really cool. So proud to be working with you on that.
Great. I think it's a perfect segue, because we're actually going to talk about the COVID relief program that you know, that we put together, and there's about I think 80 plus credit unions that are leveraging this. And the way it works is that, you know, if I kind of start from the beginning, is we have really all of these members that are looking to get COVID relief programs, and you know, they're filling out the forms, they're submitting their requests, and what happens is that Cinchy enables collaboration across all these 80 credit unions to be able to, you know, look at the information that is stored in the platform, make decisions around, you know, the level of the member, how do they qualify, does it make a lot of sense, all the checks are in place. And what happens is it accelerates the funding activities and the reporting side of being able to enable these types of solutions, so that it's a seamless experience for the member, but also it's a seamless experience for both the credit unions and also the governing bodies that you're ultimately reporting to from a regulation perspective. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of the results. So we have 80 credit unions that are using this today. You know, there are, I think, 250 if you're just looking specifically around Canada, and the other ones have decided to kind of do it on their own. But all of it, in terms of an impact perspective, I've heard is really it requires, you know, 4 or 5 resources, and the bigger you are, it's going to require more. around some of those challenges, and there's reporting and so forth. But of the 83 credit unions, this is kind of the results that we've seen so far. So maybe Dan, if you want to keep going. So to report on behalf of 83, one FTE on 83 credit unions that ultimately from a reporting standpoint, if they had done this on their own, same requirements, same reporting regulations, all of these things, it could be 2 to 3, it could be, depending on the size of your credit union, it could be 1, but the amount of scale that takes place because of the fact that you are now collaborating and really shifting the approach from every organization needs to stand up their own system, to stand up their own forms, to validations are a huge nightmare, looking at data quality, all of those things. The ones that went on their own are struggling because they have to put more bodies on it. And the ones that have moved to the CEBA program, what they've been able to get is the scalability of it. So we got one FTE that's really supporting it, 83 credit unions. We fund, north of $500 million across all of these members. And there's about 11,000 plus applications. And when we started this, it was, especially, everyone felt kind of the urgency around COVID. And it's like, how do we get money into our members' hands ASAP? And I remember we had started, I think it was like Monday, we had this concept of an idea. And by Friday, we had already a version 1.0 ready to go out. And we were able to accelerate the delivery of this on behalf of the credit unions. And, there were other credit unions that kind of took the more traditional approach. What they did was they built a front end and then they would extract the file into a CSV, and it met the requirements of, just fund people because we need to give them money. The problem with this is that every program always evolves. I don't know what regulatory initiative you've ever worked on where it's 1.0 on the rules. Now it's 1.2, it's 1.3, it's 2.1, it's 2.4. And those things begin to evolve after you've kind of done it. And through CEBA, we've done about 7 versions. And the organizations that went the manual route when they did 1.0, they started to feel the pains when 2.0 came, because then that asked for extra validation checks, data quality. It was looking at like business numbers, making sure that it was submitted. They looked at evolving the program where it allowed for other credit unions to actually request more funding, but you needed to make sure that it didn't exceed a limit. And those types of things, when you do those manually and it has a nice front end and you extract the CSV and you use all the people, it becomes quite cumbersome from an operational perspective. And through, with Dataware out of the box, you kind of get all of those capabilities, versioning, governance. Once the data is on the platform, you're able to collaborate, you're able to do simple reporting on these things. And so that's just kind of the first aspect of getting kind of the front end requirements. But then there's also regulatory reporting requests that change all the time. Like, I need this attribute. I need to look at this information on behalf of the government. Are you double checking these things? Do you have the rights, employee, work number or whatever the case? Those requirements change in all these version 7s. And for us, it's quick to adapt to these things because our platform is so flexible, and you get the benefits of really being able to take it fact that, with plasticity, with all the capabilities on the platform, you're able to evolve your model, add new attributes, support new requests, and give it in a format that always makes sense for the governing body at the end of the day. So, this has been an amazing program. It really shows the collaboration side of all these credit unions, especially when there's 83 credit unions using it. But this is just kind of the start, right? How many projects or use cases are in that same pattern? Being able to digitize your member experience, being able to operationalize it, streamline this process, but also take advantage of the fact that this requirement is the same for all credit unions. It doesn't matter what size you are still faced with the same level of requirements. And you can go alone, build these things, but why do that, right? It's having this ability to collaborate, and it's not really, these types of capabilities don't differentiate you from a credit union perspective. And what you're looking for is efficiency and scalability and so forth. So that's a little bit about the CEBA program. So, we talked about, I'll take a look at, one of the common patterns we've seen, and Neil had mentioned it, is looking at tackling those critical spreadsheets, right? It's all those user managed data that exists in your organization, access databases. Maybe it's just a database that just stores information, Excel, whatever the case. And what you get with Dataware, what you're able to do is, well, like first thing is you get a lot of self-service, right? So today, these Excel forms, it's on people's desktops. You have an employee that has access to the information, only that person, and you need visibility. You also probably need to reuse that information as well. And what you get with Cinchy is that once the data is on the platform, there's a lot of self-service and collaboration across your different teams. The second thing is really it's the scalability and the enterprise-grade controls that exist, all of the versioning of the data, all of the ability to look at who has access to the information, who should have access, and being able to manipulate and access the information is, today it's a free-for-all when you have all these end-user computing solutions. When you put it on a Dataware platform, you actually get all of the controls and you don't sacrifice any of the agility. So that's one of the biggest benefits of what you get with it. And then on top of that, in my career, I've worked on tons of projects where we're faced with making a decision on how do we approach this critical process that is today. We've felt some pain around, corruption of files, whatever it is, very sensitive information. It's all Excel based. How do we do this in a scalable way? Common thing is maybe I'm going to build a custom application, very expensive, takes a lot of time. You have to think about, all of the enterprise grade controls, which generally is more of an afterthought. It's just being able to just store the information and your projects generally balloon. And when you have like 90 of these, you're not going to spend, 200, 300 per one Excel sheet to replace it with an application, do that 90 times. Like that's unrealistic. And even the first one, it's almost like it may not make a lot of sense to take that away, right? And so what you get with Cinchy as a Dataware platform is you're able to continuously reuse the platform to eliminate all of these Excel-based processes as a way to do that. And, and then also on top, oftentimes, once you start getting into Dataware, you start using it to solve a lot of these specific end user computing solutions. You want to be able to integrate it to other systems, feed the data downstream because there's a lot of relationships. You want to be able to bring in data from your core system. Cinchy provides you with a number of capabilities that allows you to really connect and synchronize this data from a number of these core systems, Salesforce, SaaS apps, on-prem apps, et cetera, database drivers, et cetera. Those kind of come with the platform in itself. And then the last thing I'll just say around really is the security aspect of it, being able to integrate it with your single sign-on or your Active Directory and meeting your security requirements from a cybersecurity perspective. Cinchy provides you with a ton of capabilities out of the box that support a lot of those enterprise-grade controls. So that's a little bit about the specific use case that we've seen very common in a credit union perspective. So why don't we? I think now would probably be a good time to demonstrate how we would do that in the context of Dataware. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah, we're probably running a little bit over versus what we were originally planning, but I can do it really quickly, just so that people can get a feel for it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, so you saw earlier kind of a little peek at how we're using it inside of our organization, where you can kind of go into these different experiences. I can look at it in a tabular Excel style experience, or I can look at the same information in a form style experience. But the ability to create these experiences, be them tabular, be them form based, or be them different ways of experiencing, is actually incredibly easy. So I like to think of it as taking an Excel spreadsheet and converting it to Dataware, or the Dataware-ification of a spreadsheet. So here I have an example of a spreadsheet that is a settlement request form for doing wire transfers. And I won't go into the guts of this, but it's like any other spreadsheet. It's got fields, it's got validation rules, it has some complexities, and of course there's a business process that surrounds that sheet that has a lot of manual intervention and key person risk and all the other considerations. So being able to, over the course of literally hours, go from the Excel version of that to the Dataware version of that is a simple configuration exercise. So now you're seeing the same form, like there's a method of payment, there's amount in currency. Well, there's amount in currency, but this has the ability to do validations. I can see different currencies and get FX rates, and I can control the values and do validations, set fields as mandatory. And like if I'm looking at, let's say, the recipient, and I'm doing the beneficiary name, I'll just put in a fake record here just so you can see, but I'll pick Bill Gates as an example, and I'll put in an address of, I don't know, 1 Main Street, comma, NY. Let's say they're in New York, and if I save that, then you can see it's actually done some enrichments, because first of all, the address has been dynamically translated to be fully resolved and telling you it's in Brooklyn. But maybe instead of that, maybe they live at Cinchy. Bill Gates lives at Cinchy. I don't know. But if I save that, then you can see that, well, there's Cinchy's address, right? So here we're applying a simple address enrichment model that behind the scenes, it uses Google's Places API, but it's the kind of stuff that you can do over the course of hours. And the payee here is discovered in the data fabric to actually be applicable in another context. So it turns out that they're actually also a lead. So here they're acting in the context of being a payee, but they're also separately someone that we're positioning and selling it to in a different context. And I'm just seeing a random cat at my window. But now I can see this information about this lead and everything about them and the personalities and all that stuff. So the ability to have connected knowledge between that, but yet the ability to create the digital form of what used to be here, and being able to do that over the course of a couple of hours, the ability to apply enrichments to that and have that information all stored where it's access controlled, it's version controlled. You can build business processes around it. I can look at the history of change. All of this just comes out of the box. You don't have to do anything. It's just can create the form and you get the business process. Now create the next form and you get the next business process. And every solution pays it forward. So like if I go to payment request authorization forms, you can see kind of where it is in the context here. There it is. I can see the links and connections. You saw how it was connected to currencies. Well, there's currencies. You can see there's a settlement currency. And so that's the power of it. These are the kind of things that you could do over the course of hours, days, not months and years. Was there anything else that you wanted to show for that?
No, I think now would be probably a good time to just do a quick recap, and then we can leave it on the floor for anybody that might have questions that are interested in kind of going further.
Sure. Oh, you got rid of my monster slide, the first monster slide. Oh, I did. Okay. I was going to do an experiment because, but Alan now ruined it by removing my slide. But the question really was, I'm sure everyone's thinking the same thing, which is, well, how would a monster summarize what we've just covered here? So really the key highlights here is that unlike analytic focus approaches like data warehouses, Dataware is addressing the issue of data complexity by eliminating the silos. Whether it's an existing silo that you can connect once and never need to connect it again, or a net new capability where you're creating information that is now being originated in the platform natively without ever having to create a silo equivalent of that, that's the solution to the data complexity problem. And we've been 3 years in market, and we have over 100 enterprise customers. And the one thing that I'm most proud about is that we actually don't have any churn. We've never lost a customer. The benefits, we've covered some of those today. There are more than what we've covered today, but really it's the simplification of how you build technology, how you do integration, how you enable self-service, and how do you achieve full automation on governance and controls. And we're seeing it providing immense value. Like we covered a couple of use cases, like being able to rapidly replace EUCs and desktop tools, being able to launch a digital loans experience on behalf of credit unions where it's fully white labeled and from idea to production ready in 5 days. And those are just a couple of examples. There's a lot of those type of stories. And that's like one of the reasons why I think we don't have any churn is our customers see Dataware as a competitive differentiator. It's not an app for that. It's a different paradigm that really enables you to move the needle in terms of what experience you provide for your members. So it can scale with any size of credit union. Like we've used it even just for our own business when we were 2 people. We use it today when we're 53 people, and we have every kind of range of the spectrum, from the smallest to some of the largest that are utilizing it across a variety of use cases. So yeah, so when you think of Cinchy and you think of Dataware, this is ultimately the vision, is the elimination of integration. So I'll stop here and we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a quick look if there was anything in the specific chat. I know you addressed Michael's, without Excel and spreadsheet, does Cinchy have an interface that helps capture data in the way that's similar to Excel?
Yep.
Alan,
yeah, thank you for answering that. That was helpful. As a finance nerd, I struggle with getting away from my Excel spreadsheets, but I know that you figured it out somehow.
Well, Excel is great because it's flexible and you can rapidly create data structures in, basically sheets inside of workbooks. And so you want to be able to create those equivalents. So in here, they're called tables, but they will mimic like a spreadsheet style interface. But the advantage is, not every workbook is a silo anymore, because I can link my sheet to your sheet and you can link your sheet to someone else's sheet. And that sheet can be linked to your core banking platform. That's the difference, right? It's the power of a spreadsheet, but without the risk and without the control and without the silos.
Now, for financial reasons, do you have similar financial functions built in, like IRR, NPV, things like that?
So the platform enables those to be pluggable, so you can embed logic. So it's the way to think of Dataware is it's not a pre-configured solution that implements all of your business rules. It's more of a capability for which you can create those capabilities on. If you have an existing finance system, you can plug it in and just unlock the data. Alternatively, if you, let's say, didn't for whatever reason, then you could create those capabilities inside of the platform natively. So like even for our business, if we want to calculate, like we're a SaaS business, it's a subscription model, and we use QuickBooks for our accounting platform, but it doesn't do deferred revenue. So you can use expensive tools, but we can basically build the ability to do a day-by-day accrual view and do that over the course of a couple of hours and not have to now swap out our accounting system, because I can basically not be limited by it. So that's the idea, right? Is you don't have to rebuild everything, because you probably already have some of those capabilities, at least some.
Got it.
Yeah.
And sorry, Neil, you were going to ask a question?
I was maybe going to ask you to, so for those of us who don't really know the software that well, for instance, and you're sitting and you're watching someone rekeying data into a mainframe system, the Cinchy solution for that is pretty straightforward. So maybe describe that, because that's a very common use case where you're getting a PDF or a document, or you've got an email and you got to transfer the information. You'd put something in front of that would be Dataware, and then you'd make it link. So describe that for just a bit for the people in the audience. I think that's important.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say is like there's different approaches, right? So like if you take that example, like maybe you have an RSP product and you fill out a form and you have your back office review the form and they find out that information is incorrect. They're constantly sending forms back and forth before they're able to do the right checks and then ultimately feed it down to your system. Well, what if you can kind of streamline that and actually have your member fill out the form to start? And instead of doing a form, you digitize it and maybe you integrate it with a DocuSign or something like that you bring them together. So it's like a seamless experience where it's all digital. They're able to sign it. And then on top of that, building front ends isn't really the challenge, right? For a lot of organizations, they build front ends all the time. Where the challenge is a lot of the data quality, right? Like the customer number, the data duplication, like what if this person has submit this twice? The business number doesn't fit the exact criteria match, all of these things. That's where the challenge of data exists. And that's where people are often very much involved because they can't figure out how to manage that in an effective way. And if you move to a Dataware approach where it's a lot more streamlined and you're always thinking about the data, well, now it becomes a lot more seamless from a member perspective, because then they can fill out the form, all the validations are right up front. The quality ultimately gets improved because it's ingested, and you're going to eventually have to do reporting on this information. I don't know any project that when you start bringing in this data, you're going to want the analytics side of it. And Dataware kind of abstracts that away where once it's on the platform, you're able to create all these canned reports as a part of it. And then at the same time, you're able to you know, do all the integration work that needs to go to the downstream systems. And just now what you've done is essentially moved all of the upfront work of your operational folks, and now you're able to redirect them to different parts of your business to solve for other challenges and take away the little add value and margin that you get already out of this specific product, and now increase the margin, be more efficient, do it in a modern way, and then also have the cybersecurity controls in place as a part of managing it. And,
yeah, so like here's some examples of just skins that you can quickly assemble. Like these were custom skins where, you know, basically a loan management experience that is basically Dataware in the middle and back. And this could be a customer facing experience for a self-service application. And let's say you were scaling a startup and you had pretty cool technology and you wanted to share that with the world, and you had to build this thing called a website, and you wanted to allow them to launch video content and you know, listen to stories from customers, et cetera. Well, that's actually our website, and we built this in a day. This is actually built on Cinchy. So you can actually watch how it was built in a day, because this is just a skin. So the ability to take the complexity of data and just throw a skin on top of that that's basically the nutshell version of what we're talking about with Dataware.
Great. Any other questions from our audience? No? All right. Well, I want to give 10 minutes back. I appreciate everybody who's joined us for the call today. We hope you found some interesting things about Dataware. And like we said, if you're interested in learning more, feel free to visit cinchy.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.